something that I've built out of a couple of other presentations I've given over the past couple of weeks, because there are so many huge questions right now about how in the world we can provide what we need for our young children in this time. So this huge question right now is, what does quality early learning even look like during the coronavirus crisis? And how can we, as educators and researchers, child care providers, those who are facilitating really high quality interactions between adults and children, how can we make a difference during this moment? So I'm going to take you through some ways that I've been thinking about this. And I want to just recognize right off the top that this is unprecedented and we really don't have solid answers. So much has not been tested. So we are in a very much of a kind of a trial and error stage. And that's why your ideas and your questions will be so important during the conversation. So as you heard in the intro, I've written some books about the intersection of technology and early childhood, but I just wanted to say from the very beginning that they're all based in recognizing that technology is not the end-all be-all for young children's growth and development, but it certainly is a tool. We know that what children really need are so many things that give them a rich learning environment, including the ability to go out and play and be on playgrounds with their peers and with their friends. And right now we don't have that ability for our kids. So this is a really unsettled and hard time for families, for teachers, for our children. And what we just really need to be asking ourselves is, giving ourselves some grace and forgiveness for this, but also how can we start to make things better? What are some things we can do to help promote some positive experiences for our kids during this time? So the things I wanted to do to start is to recognize that we're not starting from scratch. We can apply what we know about high quality learning environments, and we can apply them in this time of more at-home learning for our kids. So I'm going to take you through just a couple of principles that have come up from other work that we've done, both at New America and in some partners' work that's been just pointing to what we know quality looks like. And then we'll use that as a bouncing off point. So the first thing I want to point you to is some work that we did for a project called Indispensables for Quality Pre-K. It was published about a year and a half, 2 years ago now with the Alliance for Early Success. And we, with a consensus building experience with lots of different researchers and providers, came up with 3 practices that are part of what makes up quality pre-K. And the first practice, and this is the one that I know is so familiar to so many of you who are using the class tool, the first practice is that we need to be engaging in positive interactions with children and their families and recognizing the strengths and diversity of their backgrounds. But that word interaction is key in here, and the way that we have our back and forth kind of communications with children and that give and take with them and that elaboration on their thoughts and ideas, that is still something we've got to hold dear even in this time. But how do we do that with our little ones when we may not be able to be with them in a classroom? And the second part of this framing here, to engage in positive interactions with children and their families, I think is part of the answer. The and their families part matters so much right now. So just wanted to kind of put that out there as kind of one of the first principles. Next practice, sorry, let me just make sure my screen can, oops, I think I went forward too fast here. Sorry. Okay, so the next practice is on this site about indispensables is around learning trajectories for young children in subject areas and various domains, supported by effective curricula to help children meet goals in learning and development. This is harder. We have to just be totally straight up honest with ourselves. This is going to be really, really tough to do given the environments that we are constrained by now. So we'll get to some things later in the presentation about software programs and curricula, but I think we need to recognize that this right now, this is what the heart of kind of learning is in the classroom, and being teachers with our children and seeing kind of where they are and then meeting them where they are and then scaffolding them up, that's going to be difficult to do. And so I think we just need to recognize that at this point. Practice 3 is around social development and self-regulation. And this is one too where we'll have to be thinking really creatively in these at-home environments about how we can help children be building and growing socially, and how we can help them build self-regulation skills. And the other part of this particular principle, I think it's important for this moment in time, is that it's important to be doing this in ways that reflect an understanding of the multiple biological and environmental factors that affect behavior. So today's kids are in all sorts of different home environments right now that may have all sorts of stressors involved. And those stressors, whether it's their parents being incredibly distressed because they've lost their job, or someone in their household who's very, very anxious, of course, because of the fear of getting sick, or maybe there's someone in their family who is in fact sick. These are all going to affect our children's behavior, and we just need to be cognizant of that and then help provide the supports to our families so that they can feel that they have some sense of control and some sense of confidence in being able to help their kids as these kinds of environmental factors get in the way. I wanted to quickly take you through some other principles that we can use to ground ourselves. The Trust for Learning has put out a fantastic resource. It's called the Principles of Ideal Learning. And I encourage you to take a look at it. There's a wheel here that I'm showing on the screen that shows all the many different principles. There's 8 of them. I just want to point out a couple that make a big difference in this time that we're going through right now. One is that, and we all know this, right, that young children and adults learn through relationships. So we really have to do our utmost to help preserve, and even if we can, build those relationships. And that's going to mean, where possible, working with parents of young children and helping parents recognize how important those relationships are, but also strengthening our relationships, if we're teachers, our relationships with parents or with guardians. And we're going to get into a lot more about that in a moment. Also, play is just such an essential element of young children's learning, and that's something that we can really encourage and provide all sorts of kind of good examples for in our communication with parents, as well as by leading children and their siblings and others to online media that might be able to show them what play, all the sorts of different ideas for different playful things they can do in their homes and in their apartments. And then lastly, I just want to point out that the principles of learning, of ideal learning, include this commitment to equity. This is so hard right now for so many, for so many families who may not have access to that many books in their home, may not have access to an online environment with a high-speed internet access where they can get kind of a constant live stream of information, be able to see videos very easily. There's so much we need to be thinking about when it comes to how our kids, especially our most vulnerable kids and families, can gain access to the resources they need. But we'll have some ideas about that too later in the presentation. So given all of this, the way I've been thinking about what quality learning looks like right now, what quality early learning looks like right now, is that it really means that we have to do everything that we can to support the home learning environment that our children are in right now. And I see 3 pieces to this, and I'm going to take you, kind of walk you through these 3 elements. But again, there may be a 4th that I haven't thought of, and that you're thinking of right now, and that I'd love to hear you mention, or put ideas in the chat. Please feel free to share with your fellow attendees. So the first is that we need to be helping parents and guardians of our young children, and we're going to go into a lot more detail about that in a moment. And that we need to be thinking about how to harness the power of having our children in their homes. They do have moments to connect with extended family and friends in those home environments. And so how can we use those moments? So I'm thinking about things like the fact that children may be FaceTiming with grandparents right now. And how can we help parents and grandparents use those moments to really engage children in learning activities? And the third is that we need to help parents and guardians and others by really pointing them to quality media that can be used right right now in their homes with young children. And that's not just online media. There are ways to point to quality print media as well. And we need to think about how we can use what might already exist in the home. And I'm talking about everything from like cereal boxes or catalogs that have been sent in the mail, how to use some of the media that might be coming into the home to provide a quality learning experience for our kids. So I'm going to take you through now a couple of examples. This is one, I'll back up for a second. I wanted to go into a lot more detail on what it might mean to help parents and guardians in this time and build that home learning environment. And we know already from research that's being done on some new technology tools that are family engagement oriented, that there are some good ways to connect with parents that can help them provide a richer learning interaction for their kids. So I've written 3 up here. There's more as well. These are just 3 tools that I know of that have some research behind them and that are rolling out. In many of them you may already use in your early learning centers or in your schools. But these are different kinds of tools and approaches that are designed to help connect teachers to parents so that parents then have more knowledge and a base of kind of understanding to start with when they're working with their kids. I want to quickly just point you to Ready Rosie. If you haven't already heard about Ready Rosie, it's a really a very high quality program because it's based in really what authentically we know families need. And it uses video to provide little snippets of examples to families of what it can look like to have like a fun word game with your children while you're in the kitchen unpacking the groceries, and how you can use moments of pulling things out of the pantry to share an early math, quick little early math lesson, or do some work on inquiry and language development. So, and Ready Rosie, there'll be some more materials coming out from Ready Rosie. They're just about to put together a book, and it includes these 7 essentials for transformative family partnerships. So I've just put a quick screenshot up here of some of the things that they're collecting and they're providing free on their website that you can use to give yourself a base of support as well. So another way to help parents and guardians is to just recognize what they might need in their homes right now. So this second one that I have on the screen here is delivery of art supplies. It doesn't have to be art supplies. There's all sorts of different things that can be delivered to homes, of course, and meals, and finding ways to connect families with nutrition, of course, is very, very high on the survival and priority list. But there may be also some ways you might want to help get information and tools and supplies out to families. So there was a neat example that we wrote about at New America recently at a school called Bria Charter School in Washington, D.C. This is a photo from that school of one of the parents there and her children and her little guy. This article describes how Bria set up a GoFundMe campaign to collect money that so I understand that the teachers then at the school used to send art supplies to the families, because they had addresses and they had information on where families were, so that they could pick up various things that they could use with their little ones. You can find out more about this and a lot of other articles that we're writing about how different schools and in early learning centers are kind of coping. You can find that in a special section that we've created called COVID-19's Impact on Education and Workforce Policy. So another couple of ideas here for helping parents and guardians are to be really helping to think about playful activities that children can do at home. And so I want to quickly point you to, there we go. Goodness, sorry. It's moving around a little bit too much, sorry. All right, you guys see that there, the PBS Kids Daily Newsletter. If you don't already know about this may be something you want to tell your parents about. You can get, they can get an email every morning with ideas for things they can do with their kids. And it's not only about PBS programming. So there's lots of just different really fun ideas in there. there's also a lot of people who are writing online right now about activities that you can do with young children. And many of you as teachers, I think, already know a lot of this and can put together your own materials for parents that are much more kind of applicable and relevant to their situations and in their home languages as well. But just a couple that are up here from a Brookings Institution blog. This is some guidance that came from Kathy Hirsch-Pasek and Roberta Galinkoff, who, as many of you know, have written a lot about playful learning and how to ensure that play leads to learning and how to recognize that learning is about being playful. So it's everything from making music to going on a field trip in your backyard to acting out a show, and some other really fun ideas that come through in that little parents guide that they've put up. And then lastly, I was going to take us through some thoughts about how we can help parents by lowering the anxiety over screen time and how we can help parents in choosing quality media. And I have a framework that I use to help parents with this. So I'm going to share that with you really quickly. And then after that, I'll pause for a moment and see if there are some questions that have come in. So one of the, oh goodness, I'm sorry that I keep giving this, okay. Thank you for bearing with me as I'm over clicking. I want to just take you quickly through this framework for choosing quality media. This is called the 3 C's. It's something I developed almost, over 15 years ago now, when I was looking at the research on what we know about how screen media affects the way young children learn. And what the science really points us to is that it's not just about how much time children might be looking at a TV or looking at a screen. What really matters is the content, the context, and the individual child and the child's needs. So the content is everything from ensuring that they're not seeing anything violent on the screen at all. Do not show children anything violent or aggressive. But in fact, that they're seeing information, stories, and materials that are designed to help them learn. So we know that programs like, whether it's Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers, or so many of the really high quality programs that have come up over the past 20 years, that they're really designed and researched with the idea that children can learn from the screen if things are designed well. So that content is super important. The context can be really tricky to understand, but it is key to all of this. And that's recognizing whether a child is kind of co-engaged when they're looking at something on a screen. So is there a co-viewer with them? Maybe a parent's watching with them or playing a game with them, or maybe they're with a sibling or their parent or a grandparent. Maybe they're actually co-watching in a virtual way, like on a, you know, in a Zoom or FaceTime kind of environment, but they're both engaged in looking at something together and talking, laughing and singing around that media together. It also means the context in the child's daily routine, such as whether you're using the media in a way that can help a child calm down and get to sleep, or whether it's something that's actually going to disrupt their ability to calm down and have a good bedtime routine, for example. And the last one, child, just means tuning into the individual needs of the child. Every child is so different. And as you know, as teachers, they were at so many different moments and levels of their learning, even before the coronavirus happened. They still are, and their parents, I'm sure, are very aware of how different, like, one sibling might be from another. So it's recognizing that some children might be really sensitive to certain things they're seeing on a screen, might be made more anxious by certain things. Even something like simple as like Curious George could cause some children to get really anxious, whereas other children, that's not as upsetting to them, but in fact, they are finding that they want more. They're really engaged in dinosaurs, and that particular child would love to see more on dinosaurs, and you can really help to build their learning trajectory by tuning into that child's needs. So I will stop for a moment and see, and then we'll go on to this next slide and see if anyone has any questions.
Hey Lisa, it's Emily at Teachstone. The main question everyone wants to know is whether you'll be sharing these slides, or if there are any other resources that you may be able to share after the event.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry, I'm moving around now because my dog is barking, but absolutely. And I don't think I've got them shared yet on the app, but I'll be able to do that. And yes, I know I'm going to be going through things quickly, and there's lots of different links and things in there.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll be sure to post that in the event app, and everyone will have access to it long here.
Yes, yes, okay. All right, well, I'll keep going, but Emily, definitely jump in if you need me to.
I will let you know as
Okay,
we get
okay,
questions.
great. And I'll check my time here as well. I've got about 25 minutes or so. Okay, so now let's move to, so in addition to helping our parents and guardians of our young children, what can we do to harness the power of the remote connectivity that's happening within households right now? So we know that FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, whatever it might be, these are becoming really valuable tools for families to stay in touch with each other. And then there's the good old just, a cell phone call, as well as, and I find this to be incredibly kind of sweet and charming in this day and age, sending postcards, sending mail, writing letters, having a aunt or a cousin send a letter that a child might be able to at the very beginning stages of reading might be able to kind of sound out and read. Those can be some really neat ways to use what we have right now, which is that families are trying to connect with other family members. So here are just a couple of ideas on the screen for this. This, of course, is going to require, that teachers are connected enough to families to be able to get a sense of whether these kinds of things are possible, even in families' homes. And just goes back to the very beginning about building that relationship, teacher to parent or teacher to guardian, so that there's someone there that you can connect with in the family, who's willing to kind of take your call, and who also may be really reliant on you as a teacher for some help, who's feeling overwhelmed by what's happening in the home with lots of kids around, or maybe tantrums are starting to erupt because everyone's so anxious, and they need you as teachers as well. So finding ways to build those relationships, and then from there springboarding into these fun things that we can do in these remote ways is really important. So last one I have on here is reading together and listening to books together. And I just wanted to point out that we've been doing some work at New America, and that many others in our kind of community have as well, to help people, especially teachers, navigate some of the copyright rules that might be out there related to books, and whether you're allowed to read books out loud, whether you can do that in a Zoom chat with little kids, for example. The answer is absolutely yes, 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 you can do that. Don't feel restricted for many reasons. One is we're in an emergency time, and so there are things baked into the copyright law that recognize that we're in a time of emergency, but also because this is essentially kind of fair use, where we're transforming the use of these books in a way so that they can be made available to little kids right now. So if you've been wondering whether you can take a children's book that you might have at home and hold it up to your webcam and do a story time with your little kids, the answer is yes, absolutely. And so you can find out some more information about this on this EdSurge article. So once we've gotten kind of through those, just to back up, just to remind you where we are. So we're talking about how to improve and to ensure that quality is built into the home learning environment. We also have to recognize that media is coming into the home. And now is the time to be helping parents bring up media that's of high quality and that can really help our children in various ways. And we, like I said before, there is some really good, solid research on various forms of media, everything from TV shows to some of the new apps that are out there. But we really have to realize it still is a digital Wild West when it comes to a lot of the apps out there, and many of them haven't been vetted. So what you may want to do instead is go to the curators who are making decisions about what apps might be useful for young children, and or who are watching the the TV shows first to give you a sense of what you might see in that TV show if you're going to point young children to it. So I have on the list on the screen here right now a number of different kinds of curators that you may want to avail yourselves of. There's a new one that just opened about 2 weeks ago called wideopenschool.org. It's Common Sense Media is part of that, as well as Noggin and other organizations that are focused on young children and their learning environments. There's another one called Learning Keeps Going that is focused on slightly older children, although depending on those of you who are in this, who are attending this, some of you might be working with kindergartners, first, second, third graders. And Learning Keeps Going is about kind of designing learning environments and helping to design learning environments for kids in the K-12 environment. I mentioned the Common Sense Media. There's also a person that I follow for his really good advice, who's in the kids media world, named Scott Traylor, and you can search for his name and see his list of creative apps on medium.com. We, Michael Levine and I, when we wrote the book Tap, Click, Read, we created a website, tapclickread.org, and we have a lot of different free downloadable resources on that website, including like a checklist of different curators. And you can go through and see, okay, this is what Moms with Apps is looking for. Here's what Common Sense Media is looking for. And then there's a model that 0 to 3, the advocacy group, has created called the E-AIMS model. And it looks at engagement, being actively involved, making sure that things are meaningful for young children and that they're socially appropriate for young children. And so that E-AIMS model may be very valuable to you or your organization as well as you're trying to decide how to move forward. This is just a quick screenshot from one of the downloadable materials that we have at tapclickread.org. And you'll see here on the left that it's just showing, obviously too small to read right now, but it's a list of different curators. And then we created a grid here so that you can see what the different curators are focused on. So you can make your choice about whether you're going to go to Common Sense Media for this, or I'm going to go to Teachers with Apps for that. What we want to avoid, just wanted to make sure we make this point, is flashcard literacy. We want to make sure that we're providing screen media materials to young children when we are providing them that are authentic to their environment and that are something related to what they're learning and aren't just about kind of putting flashcards in front of them and asking them to memorize things. Wanted to make sure we all know about the position statement from NAEYC and Fred Rogers Center, which also provides some really good principles if you're thinking about trying to navigate this world of finding good digital media for young children. And lastly, just a couple of other options to be thinking about, ideas that you can give families, different ways to use some of the materials that are already out there online. Your local zoos, so if you are in areas, maybe your kids already have been to the zoo on a field trip, that's great because they'll have something in their mind to understand it from. But even if they haven't, you can take them to the zoo by going to the zoo's website. And there's all sorts of fun webcam activities and various other things that children can explore that our zoos and our museums and others are putting up for little kids, and for all of us, honestly. Go to your public library's websites and see what they're providing. Some of them are trying to do story times via like Facebook Live. That could be a fantastic opportunity for your young ones. As I mentioned, PBS is a fantastic resource. KQED in particular has resources for home-based learning that are all broken out by age group. If you haven't heard of Wonderopolis, check it out. There's a wonder of the day you can put in front of your children, and on and on. I just want to, lastly, and then I want to make sure we get to questions, point out that this can be incredibly difficult as well for children who have special needs and for their families. And finding resources that can help those families will be very key as well. Telehealth is a great opportunity if you have the ability to do that with your little ones and with their families. But I just wanted to point out that there's a video available on YouTube right now. It's a webinar by Beth Poss, who's an educational consultant from Montgomery County in Maryland. And it's talking about how to use mobile technology with young children who may have special needs. And so lastly, I'll put this up that we're going to get through this. There's going to be a moment when we won't have to be quite so constrained in the way we're thinking about quality early learning for our kids, and where our playgrounds are going to be full again. So we need to have that hope. But in the meantime, there's so much that we can do to support our families who are struggling right now. And hopefully these ideas will take us a much closer step in that direction. So I'm going to put this up for a little while because it's got my Twitter handle. If you're interested in following me on Twitter, it's @Lisa Guernsey. And then I also, by the end, I'll put up some information about New America. And I'll pause here and see other questions that might have come in.
Thanks, Lisa. This is such an amazing set of resources. There's just so many good things in here. We did have a couple of questions. Jess Belcher wants to know whether you are familiar with or you like the, I think it's pronounced Vooks, VOOKS app.
So yes, although it's been many years, to be honest, since I've looked into it. So I'm glad to know that there may be, that it's still there. As I understand it, it's, video and books put together. And I do think that finding a way to be introducing our children to books and the experience of reading books while also harnessing the power of technologies like video is key here. I don't know if there are any other questions related to Vook. People are worried about it.
It looks like she's really, Jess wanted to comment that it's free for teachers right now.
Excellent.
And so wanted to let everyone know that.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. And then Diana Lloyd has a question. She says, for many families, online devices are used for child occupation, in quotes. Any research or suggestions about how to support families in transitioning from this habit to a more intentional use of e-learning?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. And it's absolutely true. So there's two things, right? Right off the bat, I want to say that, yes, I am hopeful that this moment might give us an opportunity to have really relevant and authentic conversations with our families about how to be wiser about how we're using media with our little kids, and not making it seem like it's some toxic, horrible thing that they need to stay away from, but also recognizing that there are, we need to be much smarter about the content, and we need to be recognizing that we still want our children to be creating and not just consuming, and have these kind of opportunities to really use media in ways that lead to deeper learning. And so that means helping families to see that this isn't just a time to park them in front of something and walk away. Now, just before I go on, I want to say that it's hard right now. It's hard to be a parent right now, especially if you've got lots of little ones at home, or if you're supposed to be teleworking at the same time. And so we've got to have some understanding that our families are probably using these, whether it's, an app or a game on an iPhone or an iPad, or a tablet, they are probably using this to park their children and occupy them. And that's not going to be the end of the world. As long as it's good content that they're parked in front of. But if we can transition them to a place where they can engage with their little ones together, give them encourage parents to watch and play together, and say to the parents, could be hey, this is a fun time for you to be able to just take a break, or let your child be in the driver's seat, but you can kind of be there with them and see what they know, or have your child give you a tour through what they're experiencing, so that you can kind of get a window onto why they love what they're doing so much, or why they're so excited about that character, or why they like that game so much. And that can be a step toward that co-engagement that's so much more valuable for learning. And then I'll just lastly say that once you can bring in some co-engagement, that opens up new terrain for parents to have conversations with their children when the devices are off. Right? So then there's something else that parents can ask their kids about, whether they're sitting down for dinner together, or they're collecting pine cones in the backyard, or whatever it might be. There might be more jumping off points for conversation, because they've both viewed something together that relates to what they're then doing later. And another last example is playing pretend at home. Lots of little kids will pretend to be the character that they've seen in a TV show. And parents can get that. You'll be able to understand what's going on a lot more if you can have some time to just co-engage with your kids and understand why they might like that character so much.
Okay, I'm continuing to check. I don't see any other questions, but we'll give it another moment and see. Nothing for now.
I'm going to, since I'm still sharing my screen, I might, if I could take a moment, I did want to make sure to show you guys something. For those of you who are working with families where English is not their first language, I want to make sure that everyone's aware of some resources that can be valuable to you. So are you seeing some ways I'm doing this? I'm just going to kind of open up New America's
yes, we can see your, yep, we can see
this. Okay, great. So as you can see, here's me navigating to this. You'll see how I get there. So I go to the education policy section of New America, and from there, and by the way, we have a new podcast, so we're advertising that at the top here. It's really fantastic, by my colleague, Christina. Okay, and then here's our resources on COVID-19 and its impact. And here are all the articles that we're publishing right now. And one of them, published by Amaya Garcia, one of my colleagues, is Digital Resources for English Learner Students, or for ELs. And if you click this open, you'll see here the list of materials that Amaya and Elise Franchino, one of our other staff members here, has put together. So it's a list that they're updating with new resources, but these are materials that support English learners because they're not only in English, and some of them actually are both English and what the other language might be, which is commonly Spanish, but not only. There's plenty of other languages in here too. So you'll see on here like Brain Pop for English language learners could be a resource that you use. Coloring Colorado, this is a fantastic site for literacy learning for students who are young children who are learning both their dual language, right? They're learning both their home language and English at the same time. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew that was there, and hopefully it's valuable to you guys.
Wonderful. I added the link to the New America COVID resources in the chat as well.
Okay,
if people want to check it out.
And then I'll also just go ahead and put up here so that folks can see it a little bit more about what's available here. The Tap, Click, Read book that Michael and I wrote, it's been now almost 5 years. We're going to have a big webinar on like 5 years later, you know, what have we learned? That'll be coming this summer. But what we have here are some videos that you can look at. Where is it? Okay, but if you click to the Action tab, here are some materials you could point your families to. And there's a section for materials for helping your parents, the parents that you're working with, navigate in this crazy time. Well, obviously these were written before this crazy time, but I think they can be useful here. So there's ideas for parents, and if you click this open, you get a one-pager for parents on what they can do to use different tools with young children to help promote language development and literacy learning, but while using media of all kinds, while using books, while using something that you see on the screen, while using audio, songs, etc. So maybe that can be valuable as well. Oops. Okay, and I just wanted to make sure everyone saw this too. This is how you kind of find more of the materials in New America. Any other questions? I'm going to actually open the chat now since I hadn't had a chance to get in there and see if there's anything anybody.
I haven't seen any more questions, but just a lot of gratitude for all of these resources and folks talking about revamping DLL approach and just having more resources for EL students being very helpful right now.
I mean, right now we're all just learning together, right? So at New America, for instance, we're collecting stories. And if you get our newsletter that comes out every Tuesday, a link is at the bottom, just tell us kind of how you're coping, how you're managing, if there's anything that you might want to share. And I think that we'll hopefully be stronger because of this, because we'll have new ways of connecting with families. That's my hope, is that the best part of this will be that whether it's just trying to get a new phone number so we can get a family member on the phone, or being able to have a full robust video chat with parents, we'll be able to be much more of like a channel of communication, home to teacher and teacher to home and home to school and school to home. So I'll make sure all this is available for you guys, and looking forward to hearing from you. If any other questions come up, I'm on Twitter. I'm happy to chat with you there too. So.
Wow, thank you so much. And everyone is certainly showing their gratitude, and just wanting to make sure that they can get access to all this. So yes, we will certainly make sure that all of this great information and the links are shared with everyone afterwards. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much.
So
Lisa.
glad to have the opportunity with all of you. Good luck to everybody. Hang in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Okay.